Welcome to another unit in this VBA course. In this unit we're going to talk about so-called do-while or do-until loops. And well, the do-while, do-until loops, they are similar to the for loops, which you see an example of here in the background, or rather a combination of for and if. Because what we're doing here is basically we're telling him do 1500 loops, but if the output at any point before this becomes larger than 300, then stop. And well, this is a bit static of a view, because here we're telling him do at most 1500. Well, what if this happens at the 1501st situation? So if I want to make this a bit more flexible, a bit more dynamic, that's where actually the do-while loops come into play. With a do-while loop, I'm telling him do the same stuff as you did here, but only as long as this exit condition is not fulfilled. So instead of going here with the for part, I'm starting with a do while, and then I'm putting this condition from the if part up here, but in the opposite way. So I'm putting here output is smaller than 300. So while this condition is not fulfilled, do this stuff. Recalculate the output, give a message box. And then instead of next, we're going to use loop. Okay, so far so good, but well, in this case, output is 0. It will always be increased by 1, because variable 1 could be anything. I read this from the worksheet, but the I is not defined in any which way, so this will always be 0. Well, anything to the power of 0 is 1. So here I'm always adding 1. So this could take quite some time. So we have to change this as well. So first off, here, let's put this one up. I'm setting an I equal to 1, so I start with 1. Okay, so this still is not quite the deal, because in this context I will always add only the variable 1, because the I stays 1 all the time. That's the difference with the for and the do-while loop. I have to increase this index on my own. So in this way it will increase by 1 with each loop. Well, if I run this, so he starts with 3, that's a 3 to the power of 1. Then he increases this by 1, the index. So now I add 3 to the power of 2, so I add 9. Then I add 3 to the power of 3, and so forth, and so forth. And at this point I see he starts this with the output should be smaller than 300. The output was smaller than 300, only here do I recalculate this. So at this point I'm giving back 1 output, which could be then larger than this part. So here it depends on my logic inside the do-while loop. In this case I test before I actually output this. And well, this is one way to go. You could also write this in a slightly different fashion. I could put the while condition down here. So do this stuff while this is fulfilled. Let's try this one as well. Again, it's 3, 12, 39, 120, 363, stop. So basically moving this condition in the upper or in the lower part doesn't change the outcome. But there's one change I can do, because in the beginning I said we're talking about do while and do until clauses. Do until, that's where I'm changing the while to an until. And that's more or less like the if clause in the for context. So here I would have to change this until the output becomes larger than 300. And well, larger than 300, so this will actually do the same thing. because while lesser than is the same as until greater than. So here again I have 3, 12, so forth. The last one, stop. So doesn't matter whether I work with while or until. The only difference is with the do while, he does this as long as the condition is fulfilled. With the do until, he does this as long as the condition is not fulfilled. Okay, so this worked fine in all examples. However, there's one final, let's call this warning, I have to give you. Because, as I said, he does this as long as the condition is fulfilled or not fulfilled. This could be a problem if for some reason I'm, for example, missing this part. So I won't change the I, or I won't add anything here. So if this condition is actually never reached, or if the condition in the while part is always true, then I will repeat this indefinitely. This means my program will crash. So this is really something I have to keep in mind. A for loop will always conclude. Might take some time if I go with like 1500 loops, but it will always conclude. A while loop or an until loop not necessarily concludes. Here I have to take specific care that at some point, that I model the part here, that at some point the condition either is reached or is not reached. So here this requires a little bit of extra work. Well, this then is my final comment in this context. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you want to see more on this type of content, feel free to visit the rest of the course or have a look at the corresponding playlist. I say goodbye and see you next time.